You, my listener, are all for capitalism, and so am I. We're all for the free market together, and I am here to defend it for you. Now, how do you defend the free market when you deal with a company that runs the gulag, the American drug war gulag around the country? Is not CCA, the Corrections Corporation of America, is not CoreCivic, the new brand name of that publicly traded company? Is that not a signal evidence of the genius of America, the genius of the free market, the genius of capitalism, in which men who think ahead, right, think about their customers, find solutions for that customer? CCA is a diversified government solutions company. And when we hear terms like that from some of the literature that you can print out or read or have sent to you in the mail in a hard copy, if you are an investor of that publicly traded company shares trading 15 minutes ago, well, yesterday's close at about $26 and a penny. You can celebrate all that's great and all that's the best of American free enterprise. Because after all, that is where Americans excel. They excel not just in turning everything into a profit, but they excel in doing that, in finding solutions to problems, using in many ways the Christian concept behind capitalism, behind the great wealth that rose thanks to Christianity, thanks to the other-centric teachings of Christianity and practice of Christianity, thinking of the other, thinking of the customer, and coming up with new ways to do things that cost less, that serve more people, that are more available. Think of Henry Ford and his factories, his first factories, in which the workers in those factories were paid double anybody else, all eventually to get their own cars, which they had helped make. And making things similar, standardization, all the great things of American industry. We can look at them at those things as an unalloyed good, meaning a good without alloys, right? A good that is all silver or all gold. CCA, as we know, establishes the industry standards for future-focused, forward-thinking correctional solutions. CCA is a REIT, a real estate investment trust. It's all about real estate. It's all about just as 9/11 was a real estate deal, and the demolition of those two towers was an important real estate redevelopment. Here we have the American Gulag, including multiple units in Tennessee that are for-profit, where and your gain is what's left over after all the bills are paid. And can we find a way to reduce the bills, reduce the expense, the labor costs, keep the labor costs as low as possible? When you go into Hamilton Place Mall, at one of the entrances, there's a very large poster there of a help wanted pitch by CoreCivic, wanting bright, smiling young people to be prison guards to manage the operations of thousands and thousands of prisoners here in Tennessee. In our slave system, you have to remember that CCA is a slave master. And you might say the benefit of this form of slavery is that it's impersonal. The old slavery in the Old South was highly personal, and what we have today, though, is it's an improvement thanks to the arrival of the modern welfare warfare corporate state. It is impersonal, and therefore there's no sin, right? If there's no one person responsible, and no one upon whom one can attach a wrong, well, then it's all okay. It's simply part of the culture, and we can't see it anymore as a wrong. Just unlike people today look back on the Old South, and even the most liberal-minded people say, "Well, that was just all sin. The slavery of that South was all sin." And by one reckoning within the Christian Church, but that of Bojdar Marinov, the Bulgarian Texan, it was in the Old South sinful because there was no redemption of those slaves who became believers. Right? There was to have been, among believing faithful Christian slave owners, the old rule in the old Hebrew Republic that you are finally freed by conversion into the state of Israel, as it were, into the church. You can't keep in slavery a man who's your brother in the Lord. You just can't do that. And yet the American South, according to Marinoff, did. And there's a new book out by Joel McDermott of American Vision in Atlanta that I have not read, but I'm probably going to order it. That I suspect makes that case one that's been developed by Gary North, the Reconstructionist, notable, probably our most prolific, probably one of our best living writers alive, has argued. Now, this is David Tulis, and we're gonna talk about rules and regulations. I think the most outstanding story today is in the Chattanooga Times-Free Press. It's a story about Fort Oglethorpe, and it makes an important point that we like to consider sometimes here on the David Tulis program, live on Facebook. By the way, live at Nooga Radio on Facebook. Do like us, right? Please like me on Facebook at Nooga Radio, and also live on YouTube at the Hunt News Talk Radio channel. And the story is about a sign that a very large-minded businessman has put on the side of his shop. His name is Walter Dix, and there he stands in front of the mural in front of Allied Glass and Mirror in Rossville. And the story is by Tim Omarzu, who's been at the paper for, well, maybe 8 or 9, maybe 10 years. A very good writer, and telling us about this shop on Mack Smith Road. And the sin is that the mural, which features 3 figures, some of whom are holding up, well, they're all holding signs of one kind or another. One is a woman. You can see her bust on top of her towel covering her naked body. She's holding up a sign that says shower doors, and over her head is a shower nozzle. Then further to the right, on the other side of the heat pump, there are 2 more figures, one black and one white, right? Call today, and they're holding up a sign with the phone numbers. And the problem is, it goes back to the big-minded, fine people on the city council in Fort O that said, well, we've got to have a sign ordinance. Now, the very fact that they said that we have to have a sign ordinance to control things is the problem. And I want to go back to their decisions, and want you to realize something. You my listener, you make a mistake sometimes. I think I've made it too. And that is to say, well, there's a problem there. We need to have a law, right? Even my Confederate Mike, once I heard him shout out, there ought to be a law. And I knew he meant it because he was very irritated about something that some person had done to offend him. and he said that I don't think I've actually mouthed those words, though I've in my heart sometimes felt it. There should be a law to stamp out such people, right? To prevent such tortious conduct, such wrong and evil conduct. And be able to hold those people responsible and charge them and so on. Well, the problem with the sign ordinance is this: if you don't have a sign ordinance, then what you're doing is you're saying we're going to let people in our town, Fort Oglethorpe, or maybe it's Saudi Daisy, maybe it's East Ridge, maybe Chattanooga. We're going to let people who own property put up their own signs and let them do what they will. If someone wants to invest in a very large billboard overhead to catch all the passing traffic, one that would cost maybe $30,000 or $50,000, maybe $80,000 or more, then that's something he can do on his own. That'll be his billboard. It'll be on his lot, and it can advertise his business. Of course, he can rent it out, make an income stream from that. It could be an investment in his business by having an ancillary income stream. If he's not making a lot of sales in donuts, he could buy a billboard, invest some of the estate he inherited from his aunt, invest part of that pot in a billboard over his building, advertise his shop, put up offers from other people in the neighborhood, and make a living, or paint a big painting on the side of his building, or have very large letters on the side of the building, on the front of the building. Let him do what he will to get attention. And that's why people live in cities to begin with. They live in cities for the excitement of the competition, the combat, if you will, of all kinds of people, businesses, artists, singers, industrialists, innovators, and all kinds of nerds and oddballs, and other creative people. I think a little bit of Elizabeth Miller, the artist. She had once a flap with city government over a kind of a living art object in her yard in St. Elmo, and I took her side, of course. I'm from a family of artists, and I took her side, but not just in sympathy for her artistic gifts, Elizabeth Miller, painter and an artistic maven in Chattanooga, but I also took side of the idea that she was defying these sort of European-esque, these sort of Marxist claims that sign ordinances make about the world at large. And here's the problem, and the number is 800-8949. By the way, if you've seen this mural, just give me a call, 800-8949, or any other. Remember, a couple of years ago, there was the donut shop on Market Street, and the owner there had a complaint filed against her, I think, by an official who come tapping at her door, saying you can't have artwork that big. Donuts, donuts for a donut shop. Clearly, that's an advertisement. And that violates the spirit of our rule. Well, let's go back just for a second in imagination, right? We're living here at 800-8949, 800-8949 in imagination, and we're going back to the city council that represented today by city manager Jennifer Payne Simpkins. She has a hyphenated name. I guess Miss Payne married a Mr. Simpkins, and attaches him to her. And now we see this couple parading about hand in hand across the hyphen there in her name. That the body that passed this rule said, well, we've got to protect people from signs that are too big, right? We can't have anybody investing so much in his name, so much in his brand or what he does, that his sign overweens the others. We can't have anybody being disproportionate. We need to rein in people who are standing out. Any standout who invest in a major sign, which of course is a major investment, no doubt. We can't have anybody standing out. People have to be all alike. So let's decide on a 300 square foot limit. And if that were the case, then we'd have to in the case of Mr. Dix's work of his glass and mirror shop, you'd have to chop off the woman with the bare breast, almost, the bare shoulders, or you might have to chop off the white man holding the sign. That the black man's in the middle, so you really can't cut him off. So the city council, and the story tells by Tim Omarzu in the Times Free Press this morning, tells about how that would be edited. In editing, you don't start over. You just chop from the sides or the bottom or the top, and all of which would be unsuitable. All of which would would violate the artistic integrity of the work of the artist, who has also been written up in a separate story that I looked up back in August by Tim Omarzu, and his name is Jackson Hendrickson. He's done several of these. One is for precision auto repair in the photo in the Times Free Press. So he's a good man to have on murals. But why this thing for a second? Just hold on for a second. If you have a sign, in short, the free market analysis is this. If you have, this is also a cultural analysis, okay? 800-8949. You can preempt me anytime you want. 800-8949. The creation of a rule creates tension and friction in society. Therefore what? What's the therefore, I wonder? Therefore, make no rules. And I think we have here a rule that creates a cause of action. And that's what happened in Fort Oglethorpe. The neighbor of Mr. Dix, who runs a business called RV Roof Install, filed a complaint. I mean, here's a man whose business is as gray as dishwater, right? Roof installation. A roofer is complaining about the glass man. You have two tradesmen, two men in the construction field, one taking the high road and saying and sniffing at the other, that wall is just too much. I can't do that. So why can you? See, here what happens is the rule creates a sense of envy. We have a rule that says this is entirely arbitrary. Okay, it could be 301 square feet and no one would know the difference. It could be 299 square feet and no one would know the difference. You'd have no complaints, no letters to the editor griping about the number. Right? It's entirely arbitrary. And Ms. Payne Simpkins says, by the way, that it's not the size, it's not the content of the mural. That's the First Amendment. Not the size. It's not the content that's at issue. It is the size. It's of course, if we're seeing that would be an issue, but in the way of content. But that's not what she's saying. It's the size. So the very creation of a rule creates a cause of action. In other words, when you pass a rule, a statute in Nashville or in Atlanta, or a statute in the U.S. Code out of Congress, you're creating a cause of action. In other words, there's a pivot point that's created in the law, and you create a pivot point in the law, and that lets people say, well, this person had violated the law, and so you have enforcement powers, enforcement claims made by other parties in the free market that suddenly become enforcers. The creation of a law creates two categories of people. One is the enforcement mechanism, jealous that everybody does the same thing, jealous that everybody follows the rule. And then you have the other people who are trying to escape the claims of the law or ordinance. And those are the Elizabeth Miller types. And now the very bold and artistic Walter Dix of Allied Glass and Mirror, whose story is in the Times Free Press today. And and so you have in the creation of a law creates the policing class, right? The policing interest. This is policing comes from this. The fact that we have statutes and ordinances is where police come from. If we had fewer statutes and fewer ordinances, we'd have fewer police. So what we need to have, in after the collapse, after the meltdown that's just ahead, we need to have a city council that's much more reluctant to say, well, we need an ordinance for this, we need an ordinance for that. The fact that we have an Airbnb ordinance in Chattanooga is a picture of this sin. I say it's a sin because what you're doing is you're provoking people. You're giving causes for people to have disputes, and you're claiming their property rights for yourself. You're saying I can't exercise the property right of having a mural on the side of my building that fills the whole side of my building, which is 1,500 square feet or 2,000 square feet. You're saying I can only have a sign that's 300 square feet. Well, who are you to say that if it's my property? And the fact that it's a business, so what? It's still my property. So you see, we have in my analysis a defense of you, the listener, but then you say, well, wait a minute, David, what about all those hoity-toity types, all those people who are concerned about view share, right, and who are many of them prigs, right? A prig is a person who's cocky in his view of what's pretty and what's not, and has an aesthetic sense. Probably took an art class at UTC and passed the writing course with flying colors because he knows how to write, he knows how to express himself, and knows what's beautiful. Right? He has a finely attuned sense. He's probably even read some Susan Sontag, and has the right ideas about being against interpretation. Right? And so that kind of person says, well, we need to have protections. We don't want an ugly city, and you can't put a building up there because that I have to see it. I've got a view of Lookout Mountain, and if you put a building there that's past 5 stories or past 4 stories, well, I'm going to have to see it. And so what does that person do? Well, he makes a claim against the builder, or against the party planning to build, or against the architect who's designing the building that's 5 stories or 6. And we have friction. The very fact that a law exists creates friction that wouldn't otherwise be there. And here's why. I haven't really gotten to the main point. But you can tell me what the main point is, and it's 800-8949, 800-8949. The main point, let me get this out before you decide to call. The main point is that if you don't have these rules, you don't have a tort. Just think for a second. If there were no sign rule, the man who runs the roofing business could not say, you have wronged me with your sign, Mr. Dix. He couldn't say, look, you have badly injured me. You have cost business from me. You have caused so much offense among my customers that I've lost roofing business with your glass sign business mural. So I'm asking you to take it down because it's hurting me. See, that's called a tort. That's called a wrong. It's a thing that's actionable. You can take action against being wronged like that. That's what the courts are for. The courts are open, as Jerry Summers says. The courts are open. They're waiting to solve your problem. They're waiting to resolve your issue. When you have an ordinance or a rule, when you have a planning commission, you have endless decisions made against the free market, made against common people like you. You, my listener, the common, ordinary guy, just like me, right? We're both poor. I'm a starving writer. I've been, being a former newspaper man, I've been a starving writer most of my life, and I'm still one. I'm still a starving writer. You wouldn't believe how poor I am in a lot of ways, just as impoverished as a small mouse at the end of the pew. And you and I are the ones who are offended by these rules, and they're made by people who have high views on what looks right. Why have a sign ordinance to begin with? Let people have their own signs. Let people have flashing lights. Let them have big billboards. Let them use all the neon colored paint they want. Let people paint their little hovels, their fine shops in the brightest red or the deepest pink, or let them have Elizabeth Miller come and really slash some paint around, right? She'll add some decorations that you would never have dreamed of, like her in our wonderful artistic community here in Chattanooga. All around Chattanooga, we've got many, many artists. And I've got a solution to my problem. And that solution to my problem is from you, my caller, live on the air with David Tulis. What's on your mind? What's on your mind? Well, the answer then, I think, is this. If we have more rules, we have more conflict in society, because there wouldn't be a cause of action if there weren't a rule, right? If there were no sign rule, there would not be a cause of action. There would be no wrong, but the rule creates the prospect of a wrong that the roof business owner, believe me, he would never have thought about it. He would never have seen it if there hadn't been an ordinance. If there hadn't been an ordinance, the roof man would never have had a cause for complaint, not being a man of artistic sensibilities. And caller, you're live on the air with David Tulis. What's on your mind? We're not hearing you. You're just using another phone. So I do thank you for giving me a couple minutes of your time here today on the David Tulis Show. We're live at 92.7 FM and 95.3 HD4 HD high definition. And then we've got that. We have that here. We are the HD channel. You can hear us 50 miles, 60 miles out. And I wanted to mention, I'm kind of long in my getting my thoughts out about the sign ordinance. But okay, this person has tried for the third time, and he's just got a problem with his phone. Caller, you're on the air. David Tulis, what's on your mind? All right, don't call back. So there was a story. There's a very fine essay by a writer I follow with great care, great attention. His name is Charles Hugh Smith. I've gotten about 3 of his 5 or 6 books, and I've read them with extraordinary care. They are the most beaten up books on my bookshelf. And the essay that he has today or maybe it was a couple days ago of 2minds.com is about the culture of rape. And it is, he says that, and he has a graphic with a pyramid showing the top 0.7% owning 45% of all global wealth, and the top 8% owning 85% of all global wealth. We're at the end of the era of the nation state, and we can see now the bitter fruit of having a nation state, which is cartel oriented, right? CCA, core civic oriented, where the profiteers, the rent seekers, profit off the cartel. The main cartel being the state itself, an impersonal pro-business corporation in merchant, right? It's in merchant jurisdiction. Much of what Tennessee does is in commerce, not behind commerce, but above it, but within it rather. And we have in the Weinstein, all the Weinstein followers, we have what we could call an entitled insider class that is untouchable. And they're protected by, he lists some of the kinds of people who are involved in protecting these people. And everybody knows these people are being protected by what he says is an army of spies, informers, PR flacks, security guards, attorneys, thugs, sycophants, and handlers, apologists, enforcers, and people who hide and protect this upper class, the wealthy upper class, influential intelligentsia. And this is David Tulis. I'm down here, I'm glad, with you here, the common man, David Tulis.
Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.